Hey everyone, Castellan here, back with another video. And this time, I'm going to try and justify my name by doing it about something that's almost castle-ish. Almost, but not quite. At the very least, it's not about something in a modern city. In fact, it's about as far away from a modern city as you could get. Downright prehistoric. Or Paleobrickith, if you want to make a pun. Yes, we're going all the way back to the Stone Age to do a video on a caveman's cave. This is the part of the video where I would normally talk about the inspiration and design criteria that led to what I built, but in this case, I'm going to spend a moment talking about some inspiration that didn't lead to what I ended up building. Starting with this, a barbarian minifigure with a very fancy crown. The scene suggested by this minifigure is an obvious one. A primitive throne in a primitive cave, where this minifigure broods, wearing the jeweled crown of Aquilonia upon his troubled brow. Unfortunately, that sort of falls apart the more if you think about it. Because if he's wearing the jeweled crown of Aquilonia, he really ought to be in Aquilonia, and not in a cave. So, yeah, just didn't work. The next idea I had was to build a Lego tribute to the classic movie 1 Million Years BC. Unfortunately, I rewatched that movie, and, well, if you take the time to actually watch it, it's a pretty boring movie. There's not much there that's worth paying tribute to. There's some great dinosaurs by Ray Harryhausen, and there's the poster for it, and that's about it. There's no scene worth building. On the other hand, it was pretty easy to build a Luana and Tumak minifigure, so I do have that going for me. So with all those ideas falling flat, I was left with designing a plain old cave, inspired by nothing but my own imagination. But I still had some criteria that I wanted to build into this. Number one was that I wanted the set to have 4 sides, to be all around, to not have an open back or anything. Number 2, I wanted the set to fold out, like the old castles that I grew up building. Black Falcon's Fortress and Black Monarch's Castle. And the third criteria was, while I wanted it to fold out and close up, I didn't want to make it a square. If it was going to be a caveman's cave, it ought to be more natural. And yeah, just avoid as many 90-degree corners as I could. And here's the shape that I ended up with. As you can see, as you may be able to see, it started out as a rectangle with a 45-45 triangle glommed onto the side of it. However, as I went along, I just kept adding little pieces glommed onto the side, which makes it look a lot more organic and a lot less blocky. And I will show you how it folds out later in the video. And now let's give you a detail of the sides of the cave. Starting with the actual mouth of the cave, where we've got a cave girl coming out. It's basically a almost roundish opening, built with some gray and dark gray bricks. We will move along. Not much to see on this side. Just a bunch of rocks, little tree at the top, which we'll get to eventually. Again, not a lot to see here. Although, eventually, we do get to an interesting side of the hill, where we've got a couple more trees and a spring, which I will try to show you. You can sort of see a bit of blue in there. Right in the corner below the frog, and the spring is what feeds all the trees and flowers, which of course are being collected by another cave girl. We'll see why momentarily. Also, you'll notice along here that we end up with a natural staircase up to the top, which again I will show you later on. Moving along, we've got a little pond, perhaps a creek or a river, possibly fed by that spring, with a couple more cave girls scrounging for fish and some shellfish. And that brings us back to where we began. Alright, took the camera off the tripod to give you a better look at the top of the hill. It's basically built like a mesa, almost like a castle with a little wall around the edges of it. I tried to get away from that, but it just felt natural, and it's also a good way to keep the top of the hill secure, because it's built in pieces to come off. I will show you that later. And, of course, the scene here is a couple of cavemen with some primitive homemade spears. Of course, they're homemade. Some primitive cave-made spears, hunting the wild mountain goats. Over here, we can see a tree growing from the edge of the mesa. Next to it, we've got a stand of wild grass, which is probably what attracted the goat in the first place. And a better view of the natural stairs. Maybe that spring you can see a little better. We've also got a frog and a wild pheasant. Gotta use that gray chicken piece somehow. Oops. This right there is actually a handle to help me take this lid off. And you may have also noticed we have a natural little chimney, which is possibly why this hill was chosen to be the home of the cavemen. And speaking of, let's open this thing up and see what that home looks like. Alright, and now to show off the functional aspects of this build. First off, taking off the lid, using that little finger hold I pointed out, and the chimney opening. Grab those, simply pull that off. It was fairly loose already. Then pull off this piece, and then unfold the entire thing. As you can see, one side folds out completely, the other side ends up at a 45-degree angle. Actually, 90-degree angle. And let's readjust this, get it back into the center of things. And you have the entire cave opening. Might also be worth taking the camera off the tripod to show you a vertical shot of the cave with the lid off. So there we've got the central fire with we'll call him the chief, roasting a fish over it. Got some rubbish bins for bones, some wood for the fuel for the fire, and some rocks. Got another caveman, different side, apparently a rat, and the mouth of the cave. And now a detail of the interior of the cave, starting with the fold-out left wing of the cave, which, of course, has the mouth of the cave. If you look in the lower left, you can see how I end up connecting things with a technique that's used on some of the crater city buildings. Rather than a typical pin, you've got a little vertical, not sure what you'd call that, but a little vertical thing that would be gripped by one of the grippy pieces on the right wing. We'll get to that a little later. And you can also see how I ended up getting this to fold in the way I did, with a nice 45-degree piece that's folds against a flat piece going the other way to give me a nice 45-degree angle. Not much else to say about the left wing here, other than there's a rat because, cavemen are not known for cleanliness. And now focusing in on the centerpiece of the cave, where most of the action is. For starters, you can see we've got a nice big fire pit with a big roaring fire. Because, fire is life when you're a caveman. We've got the patriarch of the cave people in the back with the big beard from a dwarf set, roasting a fish on a stick over the fire. Hopefully you can see that at this angle. Next to him, we've got probably his girl and his child, using that little wrapped-up kid that we got with the Indian woman minifigure. And surrounding that kid, a bunch of flowers as the cave people welcome a new member into their tribe. On the other side, just another minifigure who looks a bit more, not quite as primitive, but ran out of different pieces. Also, he's got a flute. And you can see I've got, along the wall, a couple of little places for them to hang some cave equipment. Some Stone Age equipment, I should say. Just a club, big rock at the end. And on that side, another spear with a feather. Also, if you look in the center here, you'll see that the floor of the cave is well above the bottom of the build. That is so that when I fold things in, and I guess you can't really see that, you can sort of see it from that angle. If I put some flat pieces on the floor of the fold-out wings, they slide right under that piece. And basically, if I fold everything in, I have a continuous floor, which, yeah, was just something I wanted. And here's something I should have shown in that first shot, a little activity of some cave people. Guy on the left using one stone to chisel another, basically making some stone spearheads. And the guy on the right, you can see, has that spear, and he's got a little feather that he's going to put on his spear. Because even cave people want to put an identifying marker on their weapon. And now the right wing of the cave, where there are three things to point out. First thing to point out would be the very heavy stone axe that's hanging there. I was trying to do something brick-built, and it just got out of hand. Something I'm a little more proud of would be the cave painting. After all, what's a Stone Age cave without some cave paintings? We can hopefully make out a very simplistic version of the mountain goats, a very simplistic version of a hunter, and next to that is a little bit of chalk that they use to make those paintings. And behind the chalk is that little clippy bit that is used to close the whole thing. One other thing that's worth showing off is when the right wing is unfolded, it folds against the staircase, and therefore the spring and the pond are in pretty close proximity. And yeah, we also have a minifigure walking away from the pond with the shellfish, which will become both a meal and an outfit. I'll be honest, I was running out of Stone Age outfits other than the Cave Girl minifigure, so yeah, I kind of had to reach for it. And one more fun aspect of this MOC is that with the ceiling pieces that come off, you can put them back on partially and, yeah, have a little diorama that's actually feels like a cave in the center. You can't quite do that on the two wings, but yeah, you do get a very cave-like center. And to finish off the video, I'll show you how I close this up. You have to swing in that wing. You can see the little grippy bit. Swing in that wing. The ceiling pieces have to be put on in a particular order. First, that piece, which is the lower one. Then the top piece. Lost the corner of it. And there you have it, a complete tour of my MOC of a caveman's cave. If you've got anything to say, leave it in the comments below, hit the like button, and also, because this ended up being a pretty thorough-looking playset, I am considering submitting it to the LEGO Ideas page. So if you really like this set, head on over there and show some support to it. It'll be under a different name because I did not coordinate my YouTube and LEGO store names, and I just wasn't thinking about it at the time. But it should be pretty easy to find. And with that, I will see you next time. Bye.